Welcome to Elk Grove Township. I'm Connie Caraselli. I am your assessor, and I have been for 36 years. And thank you. And we've heard what you've been saying to us. You are upset, you are angry, and you are having a hard time paying your property taxes. We function as township assessors, as your advocates. We do not put the assessed value on your property. We function to help you file appeals with the assessor, with the Board of Review. We help you with your exemptions, and we're going to be going over some of those tonight too, but we're with you. And I'm going to introduce now 3 of my associates. And I'm going to start here with the Barrington Township Assessor, Mike Gentili. Next to Mike is Bill Pullman, the Palatine Township Assessor. And last but not least is Ken Jochum, the Wheeling Township Assessor. We have a wonderful organization that we all belong to, 27 township assessors, called the Cook County Township Assessors Association. And it's there that we get a chance to exchange ideas, better ways of being efficient and serving you on a higher plane. But what has been the focus of our conversations recently is your distress. And since we all live in the community, we're distressed too. So we felt that it was imperative that we start a series to help you understand what's going on. We live in the information age. But is that information correct? Is it easy to find? And are we actually getting the information we need? When was the last time that you read about what was going on in Springfield? Or what bills that they were passing? When was the last time you got any information on the various other taxing districts that you so generously pay into? So we felt that it would be in your best interest if we gave you some of the information so that instead of complaining to your neighbor, you complain to the people who have caused this mess. So, from that standpoint, we're dealing with the Cook County property tax system. Now, I'm sure you were all thrilled with your early Christmas present. You also need to know that your first installment will be mailed March 1st to be due and payable April 1st. And then, of course, you can pay your federal income tax on April 15th. So it's going to be a wonderful spring. But one of the things that we've been concerned about is that maybe we've forgotten a little bit about the civics that we all learned in grammar school, and who's truly responsible for some of the things that are occurring. We are now, unfortunately, #1 in the nation for highest property taxes. Now, if that's the case, do businesses move out? And if businesses move out, who picks up their share? So we need to start being educated and informed so that you can communicate with your legislators and your taxing bodies. Now, we are a republic. And that generally means that all power is held by the people. However, they have elected representatives, right? And we have a president and not a monarch. That's a republic. We are a democracy. It's a system of government in which effective political power remains with and rightfully belongs to the people. There are two further definitions of what a democracy is, but it gets down to the basic fact that you, by your vote, or quite frankly, by your lack of vote, if you don't vote, you're allowing somebody to make the decisions for you. And those elected representatives should vote the will of the people, even though it might be different from their own personal view, but they should be representing the majority of the people. And again, we've got some additional definitions of democracy. We're very lucky to live in this country. But as a citizen, we all have responsibilities too, don't we? Politicians count on the fact you're busy. Young families have children and both mother and father work to pay for the mortgage. And remember, when you buy that house, it's P-I-T-I. Price. What else? Interest, taxes, and insurance. We get a lot of young families in here that are horrified that they've bought a house from a senior on the freeze and the proration wasn't done properly, and they're horrified at what their tax bill is. I wish we could do something for them, but we can't. So, what we're talking about tonight is what you can do. And we're going to start again on a rather basic level. First of all, if we're going to have an effective democracy, we have to have an informed citizenry. Now, do you get your information from the internet? And if you do get your information from the internet, is it accurate? Is it biased? Do you get your news from television? Is it accurate? Is it biased? Newspapers, etc., although they're sort of going the way of the dodo, they have online editions now. But are you just getting the facts? So as much as it's very easy to say you should be an informed citizen, it's very difficult to get just the facts without it having some bias of some sort. The second thing you need to have in a democracy is citizen participation. When was the last time you went to the school board meeting? When did you go to the park board meeting? Did you go to the village board meeting? When you don't go to those meetings, do you know what's going on and how much money is being spent? And here again, we're talking your money. So it's great to complain to your neighbor, but that's not going to do you any good. You need to start talking to the people that are supposed to be representing you, because you have delegated your power to them to vote in your stead. Now, if you don't communicate with them, they think they're doing a jolly fine job. But if they are not doing what you would like them to do, you have a responsibility to tell them. So this is where you learn to have a voice. Our government is structured into 3 separate levels. We're going to start with the federal level. And again, 3 bodies: legislative, Senate, House of Representatives, a president, a vice president, a cabinet, and of course the Supreme Court. Somebody came into the office and said, President Trump raised my property taxes. No, that didn't happen. But let's look at who did. We have state government. Again, we have a legislative side, Senate, and a House of Representatives. We have an executive with a governor, a lieutenant governor. He has a cabinet. And we have the Illinois State Supreme Court. Do you think the state government affects your property taxes? I want to see a lot of heads going up and down. And that is why you need to be an informed citizen to know what's going on in Springfield. The other thing I want to mention comes from my favorite document, Constitution. No state shall deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction equal protection under the law. Why is this important, other than the wonderful universality of it? But in the assessment profession, this means everybody's got to be treated equally. So, we're going to start talking about how various levels of government affect your property taxes. Certainly you know your local government, right? Hey, I'm from Elk Grove Township. We're a taxing body. I feel that we're a very efficient and economical taxing body. For over 20 years, we never raised our levy. We've been doing more with less, but we feel responsible to the taxpayer. Now, what are some of your other taxing bodies? What's the biggest one? Schools. When was the last time you were at a school board meeting? Did you vote for the school board members? And of course, in Mount Prospect, those of you had the sticker shock of the District 57 referendum. That must have been a real joy for you. However, politicians count on the fact you're busy. So what do you do about it? Well, maybe you form a homeowners association and take turns going to various meetings and keep each other informed. Also, a lot of the taxing bodies do have websites. You can check there for what their activities are or what budget problems they're having. But again, you've got to get informed. What about Cook County? Do we pay money to Cook County as a taxing body? Are we? That's an interesting, we probably should do a presentation just on the taxing bodies that have underfunded their pensions. And it's not just Cook County, it's state of Illinois. And when the rubber hits the road, who do you think they're going to pass that deficit on to? And then we have the state. One of their absolute favorite things to do is called the unfunded mandate. They pass a program that they are just thrilled with, all-day kindergarten. Let's just take that as an example. So they say, you will have all-day kindergarten, but they don't fund it. Who has to fund it? Your local school district. Who funds the local school district? You do. So that's why I'm saying it's so important for you to become knowledgeable and know that what is happening in Springfield is directly affecting your pocketbook. Now, here's a tax bill. I want to thank Cook County Treasurer Maria Pappas. She did some really good work here because if you notice, shows you the 23, the 24 tax, and then it shows you the difference. So you see who's raising your taxes by each and every tax district. Now, you'll notice on that first one, on this bill, District 57, that bill went up $1,109 for one taxing district. Why did that happen? There was a school district referendum. And they asked for the money, and the referendum passed. Now, I'm sure that there were a lot of people that thought that this was a good idea, but there may have been people who weren't crazy about it who didn't vote. We get back to citizen participation. These elections have consequences. All right. In the left-hand corner of your tax bill, you'll see the tax calculator. Here, this particular property is valued at $505,000. Homes are assessed at 10%. Then you multiply it by the state equalization factor, which in this past year was 3.0355. Now, in assessment terms, perfect assessment is 3.000. So this equalizer is telling us that there is an overassessment by the county. But that's a number derived by the Department of Revenue. Then it's multiplied by the local tax rate, and that's the compilation of all the taxing districts. And in this one, it's a little over 10%. And so the tax bill should be $15,552.44. But there are homeowners exemptions. This is for people who have their principal residence, and we'll go over them. And the senior exemption, this particular one is not on the freeze. And then it shows you that first installment was $6,835, and second installment was $6,893. First installment is always 55% of the previous year. So if you've got your tax bill from last year, second installment, multiply that by 55%, and you're going to know exactly what your first installment is. When we talked about exemptions, this is the first thing you do. You make sure that you have the appropriate exemptions on your property. Homeowners, and you don't have to take notes because we gave you a brochure, and so all the exemptions are listed in there. So I won't go through all of the qualifications, but of all of the staff from the 4 townships are always available to answer your questions and to help you apply for these exemptions. They are dollars in your pocket. So we have the homeowner's exemption, the senior exemption, 65 years of age or older. Senior freeze. Now this is interesting because this is 65 years of age, born in 1960, but it does have an income cap of $65,000. And that's listed in your brochure, but in this last session of the Illinois legislature, there had been many complaints from seniors that were being forced out of their homes that this needed to be updated. So it's $65,000 this year if you apply. Next year, $75,000. Following year, $77,000. And in 2028, with a bill paid in 2029, $79,000. This is a good step for our seniors, right? But I find it interesting that it's $65,000 this year. They should have made it retroactive because people are hurting now. Disabled persons exemptions. Disabled veterans exemptions. These are all in your book. World War II veterans, love this one. It's a dwindling generation of people who did extraordinary things. So, We've got Springfield that's spending our money. We've got the county that's spending our money. We have local tax authorities spending our money. And local taxing bodies can ask for even more. For example, the Village of Mount Prospect is a home rule taxing body, which means they can, whatever they ask for, they get. School districts have caps on them so that they can only raise their levy to a certain degree. However, what do? They go for referenda, right? So when you see referenda, get informed, participate, and vote. This is your responsibility. And when we talk about referenda, what we have to talk about is some of the other things that have gone on, and I want to reintroduce Ken Jochum, and he's going to continue the discussion.
Thank you, Connie. Very few people know this. I'm Connie's uncle, and I remember when she was in 8th grade, she led her first anti-tax protest, and she's still doing it, so great job, Connie, I appreciate that. Over the last few years, there's been a plethora of legislation that can only be referred to as anti-taxpayer legislation. And some of that legislation relates to unfunded mandates, right? Things that are required but not funded. I spoke with a school board trustee not long ago who said, Ken, it's so bad, if Springfield tells us we have to serve lobster once a week, we've got to go find the money for the lobster. We can't question it. And that's the dilemma a lot of these school boards are in. So it isn't necessarily a problem with individuals trying to, it's what they're required to do. So I want to show just one graph that gets to the point that I'd like to get to, which is what can we do, what actual actions can we do to focus on this. I want you to look just on the left side of this graph. That's all I want to focus on. That top line is the growth of property tax revenue from 1990 to 2013 in Illinois. The bottom line is the growth of median household income. Now, this graph is an example of slavery by taxation. There's no way anybody can catch up with what that revenue is. And that's the point we're going to try to make, and that's part of what Connie was referring to, why it makes us so aggravated as assessors dealing with people's needs, and we see this happening and there's no way you can catch up with this unless we get a hold of it. So I'm going to focus on one of those pieces of legislation. We're going to do further sessions on other pieces, but we don't want to inundate you with it. Focus on one kind of legislation, and in that particular legislation, we want to point out some action that we can actually take right now. That focus is going to be on what's called the Recapture Act. Anything more foreboding than that? We're going to pass recapture. You know what they recaptured? Our money. And they actually called it a Recapture Act. Now, I want you to know something that will start this right away. This Recapture Act was bipartisan. Every single member of the legislature, Republican and Democrat, voted for it, except one person. So this is bipartisan. We're not up here knocking anybody. They were all doing this. What's the Recapture Act? Well, 3 years ago they passed this, and it's been in place for 3 years. I'm talking too much and not flipping my notes. It's been in place for 3 years. When appeals are made, and people go before either the Illinois Property Tax Appeal Board, or they go before the circuit court, or they go before some other county agency and appeal their assessment. You know that. You probably have all done it. You can do a great job through the Elk Grove folks, and we try to do that, the others of us do. So you can appeal that, right? And what happens? The board says, whichever board you've gone to says, yep, that was a mistake on the part of the assessor, we'll reduce that. So you get a reduction. And you walk away thinking, boy, that's pretty good. I got $1,000 off. I got $2,000 off. I got a deduction. But there's a recapture act. And that recapture act says that the clerk of the county is going to add up all of those appeals, and she's going to recharge them to everybody in the district. So if you got $1,000 off, to use an example, you got $1,000 off. She's going to take that $1,000 and charge it to everybody else in the district. Now, when I show you the amount of money that is, you're going to be floored, and hopefully you're going to desire to take some action, and we'll tell you what that can be. But that recapture act is recapturing what? Mistakes that the assessor made, because that's what that is, a mistake. So the assessor made a mistake. The adjudicating board said, yep, the assessor made a mistake. That particular individual gets a reduction, but what they don't know is they're going to get it back again. It's just going to be spread out over everybody else. The county clerk is required to do this. Add up all those errors and send that back to you. Now what's interesting, and Connie showed you that tax bill and the list of all the taxing districts, being real transparent, right? We know all the taxing districts. You'll never find this recapture on there. I dare you. Because it's going to show up in the tax rate, but it's not identified individually. So you're paying a tax, and you don't even know what it is. That gets back to that 14th Amendment, equal treatment. So the clerk has done this. Let's look at what that's amounted to. In 3 years, in 2022, over $203 million was added to Cook County taxpayers' bills. And in 2023, over $136 million was added. This past year, over $165 million added to the tax bill. That means in 3 years, over $500 million more was collected from the Cook County taxpayer. Now it's divided up by district. So if in a particular school district they got a deduction, it's going to be the folks in that school district. It's not going to be other places. But how much is it? Your point is exactly the point. It's unequal. You don't know, right? It doesn't show up anyplace. You don't know what it is. So a huge amount of appeals is commercial and industrial because they're bigger, right? You take a big building downtown, it's going to have, if it makes an appeal, it might be several $1 million. Where does that get spread? Back in the Recapture Act, we'll get it back. So yes, it is the homeowners' appeals, but it's also those big ones. If the grand one used to be the old Sears complex out in Hoffman. When they would go in for try to get a reduction every year, which they do, good business people, they're going to try to get knocked off. Whatever they got knocked off got spread around to everybody else. And that's what's happening, will happen with everybody. It amounts to a big payday for some taxing districts. So if you look at in 2024, the Chicago Public Schools got $49.1 million back this way. Now, I have to tell you, the biggest lobbyist for this bill, who do you think it was? Schools. The biggest school districts got this through. That's why it's totally bipartisan. So that totally bipartisan. Water reclamation this year got $10 million back. Now you think about that, that's in addition to what they already taxed everybody for, right? District 214 got $5.6 million back, in addition to what they already taxed everybody on, but it doesn't show up on your bill. Now, what they're able to do when they do this is avoid the control that Connie talked about. Every taxing body except home rule, so not the villages usually, every taxing body has to meet what they call PTEL requirements. That's property tax extension limitation's important law. And that's the law that says a taxing body can only increase their levy by 5% or the cost of living. So 5% or inflation. If inflation is 3%, they can't raise their levy above 3%. But they found a way to do it. Recapture Act, right? That's over and above what they got. So it's a way to get around the protection we had that we have as citizens. Very important to know that distinction. Now, the exciting part about this and where we can do something, taxing districts can refuse that money. And in 2024, the Community Consolidated School District in Des Plaines turned down $1.8 million. Others have done that. 211 did it a couple of years ago, turned stuff down. A taxing body can turn it down. They can say we don't want it, so it doesn't get taxed to individuals. Now, what they probably did, because most responsible, I know we have any accountants in the room, but one of the things that they would do is accrue. So if I was pick a district, 214, I would accrue for a certain amount of non-payment of taxes or other issues. So these are responsible financially. They've already accrued for that. So they got the accrual, right? And then they get the additional. So now there are some places in Cook County where they don't accrue for it, and they're out of money, and so they need this. Now that's not responsible management, but it does happen. It doesn't happen up here. I mean, that we have, there is financial responsibility in most of that. So I want to mention what can we do about it quickly. I'm almost done. You can contact your taxing districts and tell them not to accept recapture money. For instance, I'm going to tell our township board, we get about, Wheeling Township gets about $30,000 in recapture money. I'm going before the board and say, please do not accept it this year. They may not like that, but that's what I'm going to say. I'll get to the question in a minute. So it's very important. We can do that, and we can contact those taxing bodies. We can also contact the state legislatures and tell them to rescind the Recapture Act. Now, the state legislator, whether it's a rep or a senator, may not have voted for this, depending upon when they went in, but they can certainly rescind it. You'll notice in your packets, you receive the contact information for the taxing bodies. So you can do something about that. You can call them once, you can call them 50 times, you can go to board meetings, you can email. If you think that you need to do something on that, you can say, please rescind it or don't accept the money. So that's the last thing I want to mention. That knowledge is power. In your packets, there are also 2 articles that deal with this more extensively. You'll see Jake Griffith in the Herald has an article on this, and there's another article from the Tribune. Those are 2 good articles that explain the issues. They quote Maria Pappas, by the way, the county treasurer, who's been all over this for years, and she goes into much more detail about this as a bogus problem. And questionable maybe, because on what basis are they taxing us? It's a mistake. Anyway, I hope you do something about it. I plan to. Thank you so much for coming. I'm going to turn this back over to my niece.
If you'll hold your questions until after the presentation is over, our esteemed assessors, my staff, Brian, Alex, and Lori, and Sue's hiding over in the corner. She's from Barrington. Very often you like to ask questions about your own property. And since we're a large group, as much as I love your property, we need to deal with the more general things. So questions after the fact. And that's the point we're trying to make tonight, is knowledge is power. And it's very difficult to get accurate information. And sometimes that means you have to put yourself in a chair at a board meeting, school board meeting, park board meeting, whatever. But just complaining to your neighbor doesn't do anything. It's time you get active. And this is, if you're going to talk to your neighbors, say, hey, look, I'm going to the park board meeting. Come on. Or I'll go to the park board meeting. You go to the school board meeting. Form homeowner associations. If you're in a condo, you've got a condo association already. So this is absolutely vital. Become informed, and then you have to participate. There are elections coming up. And anytime you see referendum, what does that mean? It pretty much translates into dollars out of your pocket. I want you to be aware of that. Ken made a very salient point about errors in commercial and industrial. There's some major data centers, right? Here in Elk Grove Township, we have one of the nation's largest industrial parks. Now, that used to bode very well for us because they paid a good deal of tax. However, if they're being overassessed and they are going to the Property Tax Appeal Board and getting massive reductions, who's paying the bill? Because of the Recapture Act, you are being taxed on the county assessor's mistake, and we go back always to my Constitution, 14th Amendment. You're supposed to be taxed on your property, not on someone else's mistakes. So, we've talked about some of the things you can do, and tonight we focused on recapture. There is legislation you need to know about, and we are going to continue this series with some of the property tax extension limitation laws that have not served you well, but you will become aware. And from that, I hope you become very active. We're full circle now. Be an informed citizen. Participate. Hold your elected representatives accountable. And you know how to do that. We've talked about it, but I want to stress this. I have been terribly concerned with the vitriol I hear at some of the meetings that have been videotaped from across the country. When you're making a presentation and you want to get your point across, stick to the facts. It's not personal. These are the facts. Be professional. Be respectful. There is absolutely no reason to malign someone for, ridiculous accusations. It's uncivil. We have always prided ourselves on a degree of civility in our society. We need to get back to that. If you disagree with someone, state your reasons. If they disagree with you, they'll tell you their reasons. Maybe you'll change their mind or they'll change your mind. But you have to have a discussion for that. A civil, educated, respectful discussion. If you do nothing, nothing changes. So I hope that our presentation tonight maybe lights a little fire, and it only takes one match to start a forest fire. I'm not asking you to do anything incendiary, but I do ask you to start being aware. Your elected officials are supposed to represent you. Let them know if they are or if they aren't. Thank you so much for coming this evening, and we'll be around for any questions that you might have.